guys, it's James here from JustDevelopers. Today we're going to be talking about pixels, and we're going to be looking at how we can style text and how we can make it bigger, smaller, and we're going to discuss on what pixels are. So as you can see, I've got a example set up. So we've got an external CSS. I've got my preview web server up and running using the extension I mentioned previously, and I have a paragraph tag with a sentence in there and also a little bit of CSS in there. Right. So pixels. So pixels, before responsive web design was about, was pretty much the only way to style text and boxes and margins and padding and borders. The issue with using pixels is it's a static method of styling a website. So if, for example, we style the width to be 100 pixels wide, it will only be 100 pixels wide. So as you make the screen smaller, the screen will start to then be cut off. There were ways around to get the screen to resize. It wasn't very popular back quite a while ago, obviously because mobile devices weren't very popular. So people just created websites in a static sense, and that basically the website was what it was. There was no responsive design, there was no need to create a screen for different device sizes. So as I say, pixels is quite old, but it's still very much used. It's still an important part of web design. So essentially, what we can do is start with is resizing our sentence, and we can use pixels to do that. Okay, so what we want to do is change it so that the sentence is going to be bigger. So by default, browsers pretty much set a pixel size for fonts as 16 pixels. So if we do font size 16 pixels, you won't see any difference. Nothing. Because the browser is naturally default to 16 pixels. Yes, there can be some instances where it's different, but in general, that's what it is. So if we wanted that sentence now to be, say for example, 100 pixels, you can now see it's huge. Okay, but also, as you notice, if we make that really small, and you know what I was talking about, how it's static, you can see the sentence is now being cut off, and we now have an overflow scroll bar. So as you can see, what I was mentioning earlier about it being static and not being responsive, this is pretty much what the 90s websites looks like. It's pretty much you had to scroll if you was on a smaller screen. If they create the website only for, say, a 20-inch screen, but you only had an 18-inch, then you're going to have things being cut off and you had to scroll. So we pretty much use pixels generally for font sizes, but we can now use other units, which we will discuss later after these talk, which is rem and em. But there is certain instances where pixels are still going to play an important part. You might not necessarily want to use rem or em. I'm trying to think of an instance where we might use pixels. Okay. No, I can't think of a instance whereby we can use pixels, but there will be instances as you start coding a website where pixels will need to be used no matter what. Rem and em just won't cut it. So that's pixels in a nutshell. As I say, I'm not gonna go too much detail. There's not much to be said on pixels, but as long as you understand what it is, you understand that it's static, it's not responsive. Pixels are still very much used. Yeah, so I've just thought of an instance actually where we can use it. Say for example, we've got a div, or even, yeah, just we'll go with div actually. Okay, we've got a div, and there's a, I don't know, p inside it. Okay, so now we've got a div. So for example, we'll give this a class name of div. I know, very imaginative. Right, so if we go with div as a class, open and close that. Right, sorry, that shouldn't be a pound sign, that should be a dot. Right. Okay, so if we now, for example, on our website want to create a particular box, and we're having issues whereby if we put it in a percentage, it's not quite styling exactly how we want it. This is where the percentages will come in hand. Sorry, the pixels are coming handy. So, if for example we just want a square, oh, actually, no, we won't use a div. What we do is an image. An image is a cracking example of where it will come in handy. So if we've got an image and we, for example, got logo in the top left hand corner up here. I haven't got any pictures to hand, but yeah, you'll get the picture. So we can use percentages on images, which will make the image responsive. But a lot of places they use a static image so that you don't have to then resize the image and play around with the image too much when you're creating a responsive design. So what you can do with an image, if we just go, we can set a default image with a pixel width of say 50 pixels, and then we can have a height of 50 pixels. And then what that will do is that image will now be 50 pixels wide and 50 pixels high no matter what, even when you resize it, because it's static and it's fixed. So what they generally do is they put the image at those particular sizes and then resize the website based on the size of the screen, but the image will always be that size. So it's sometimes good, but sometimes it is necessary not to use pixels with images, but rather using percentages, which we'll discuss later on. But yeah, that's a good example with an image, and a lot of people set their images to a particular size due to the fact that that image of the size is the size of the image. So if they've got a 50 pixel image, and they aren't using a responsive image, i.e. SVG, then they need to make sure that the image doesn't become distorted. So they use actual pixels rather than percentages. So what we're going to do, we're going to go on and discuss EM and REM pixel unit, REM units. See you in the next lecture.